Ladies and gentlemen, if someone disappears the moment you show your heart, don't chase them, thank them. Because real love doesn't run when things get real. It doesn't ghost your emotions or leave you questioning your worth. Sometimes the greatest proof of your value is found in who walks away. Because they just made space for someone who won't. Stay with me, because this isn't about heartbreak. It's about rising from it. Sometimes the most powerful act a person can do is walk away, not because they're weak or heartless, but because they recognize that staying would cause more harm than good. There's a deep wisdom in knowing when your presence is no longer a contribution to someone's peace. It takes courage to release what you care about for the sake of both people's growth. Often, walking away is misread as abandonment, but in reality, it can be the most respectful thing someone does. Disappearing isn't always a vanishing act of selfishness. It can be a silent act of love. When someone steps back, it can be a sign they understood they weren't what you needed, no matter how much they wanted to be. There is grace in leaving when you know your presence could interfere with someone's journey. Not everyone leaves because they don't care. Some leave because they care too much. We tend to see departure as failure, when in truth, it's sometimes the highest form of honesty. Letting go isn't quitting, it's honoring reality. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet, selfless decisions made in the background that speak the loudest. When someone disappears from your life, it's easy to assume the worst, to feel abandoned or unworthy. But the truth can be more nuanced. There are moments in life when a person steps away, not to hurt you, but to give you the freedom and space you deserve. It's not that they didn't feel something real, it's that they recognized they couldn't meet you where you needed to be met. Walking away takes maturity, when staying would mean compromising someone else's peace. In those moments, disappearing isn't weakness, it's restraint. It's the refusal to drag someone through emotional uncertainty. It's a silent acknowledgement that love alone isn't always enough. And it's an unspoken message that says, you deserve more than what I can give. There's a profound difference between losing someone and being released by someone. Being released means someone knew that holding on any longer would be selfish. When someone truly understands their own limitations, they stop clinging to what's not sustainable. It's tempting to hold on to a connection just because it feels good in the moment. But real care demands a bigger vision, a willingness to protect someone's future, even if it means not being a part of it. That kind of disappearance isn't rejection, it's clarity. It's the understanding that dragging something out only leads to deeper wounds. Sometimes, the most respectful decision is the one that's hardest to make. To walk away in silence, without drama, without blame. That act of stepping back can feel cold, but it's often rooted in a desire not to cause more pain. And though it may not feel like it now, it's a gesture that speaks volumes about emotional maturity. When people think of love, they often think of holding on. But there's an equally important side, knowing when to let go. Not all stories are meant to last a lifetime, but that doesn't mean they weren't meaningful. Some connections are chapters, not books, and even beautiful chapters must come to a close. When someone exits your life, it doesn't mean the time shared was fate or wasted. It means they understood the story had reached its natural ending. That kind of awareness is a sign of deep care, not detachment. It takes emotional intelligence to leave without causing damage. Instead of clinging to comfort, they chose to protect both your futures. The absence isn't an erasure of love. It's love evolving into something more respectful, distance, silence, and space. Disappearance can be misunderstood in a world where constant access is mistaken for commitment. Just because someone isn't in your life anymore doesn't mean they stopped wishing you well. Not everyone who walks away wanted to hurt you. Some knew staying would only lead to resentment or stagnation. When you care about someone, you don't want to become the reason they doubt themselves. That's why some people remove themselves quietly so they don't become a toxic influence. We often associate love with effort and persistence. But love is also knowing when effort becomes pressure. The healthiest decisions are sometimes the least dramatic ones. Walking away without conflict isn't avoidance. It's choosing peace over prolonged confusion. It's saying, I care enough not to ruin what we had by forcing what no longer works. One of the hardest truths to accept is that not everyone who loves you is meant to stay, and that's okay. Some connections are sent to awaken us, to teach us, to redirect us. The person who walks away may have played their role in your life already, and staying would only distort the lesson. When someone steps back, it creates a space, a void that feels unbearable at first, but in that space, something begins to grow. Self-respect, clarity, and emotional independence. You begin to understand that your value was never tied to their presence. You learn that sometimes love leaves so that you can finally focus on yourself. And while the disappearance hurts, it's often what sets you free. It's not about what was lost, but what will now have the room to be found within you. Letting go of the idea that everyone who cares will stick around is essential to inner peace. Some people leave because they recognize they can't evolve alongside you. It takes humility to admit that your journey is no longer aligned with theirs. Rather than staying and pretending, they exit gracefully. It may not feel graceful to you in the moment, but look deeper. It's better than false promises and emotional breadcrumbs. Their silence may hurt, but it's more honest than half-hearted words. Disappearing isn't about cowardice when it's done to preserve dignity. It's the understanding that not every connection has to end in a storm. Sometimes it ends in stillness. A quiet respect that honors what once was without trying to force what cannot be. We often expect closure in the form of words, but real closure is in actions. When someone disappears without grand explanations, their absence becomes the message. The silence tells you what their words never could, that the connection was no longer sustainable. It's natural to want reasons, but growth happens when we accept the reality presented to us. Holding on to the need for answers keeps you stuck in a place where peace can't grow. The disappearing act, while painful, brings a strange kind of clarity. It shows you what kind of energy you don't want in your life, uncertain, unsteady, and unfinished. Instead of dwelling on the absence, focus on the lesson. The more you chase closure, the less you notice the door to healing already open in front of you. Your worth is not defined by who stays, but by how you rise after they leave. You are still whole, even if someone walked away. Their departure does not diminish your value. It simply removes what was no longer aligned with your path. Sometimes people disappear so you can return to yourself, so you can reconnect with the parts of you that got lost trying to hold on. This is not a loss. It's a redirection. A chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more grounded in what you truly deserve. Instead of mourning the exit, celebrate the space it leaves behind. Space that is now ready to be filled with something real, something mutual, something lasting. There is power in being the one who chooses to move forward, even when others don't say goodbye. Every ending creates the potential for a new beginning. When someone disappears, it's not just about them leaving. It's about you beginning again on your own terms. That space they left is now sacred ground for your growth. You get to decide what energy enters next. You get to rebuild, not from pain, but from purpose. Disappearance in this sense becomes a gift, not because it feels good, but because it leads you back to your highest self. You learn to stop chasing people who aren't meant to stay. You begin to trust your journey, even when it includes quiet exits. And above all, you remember that true love doesn't leave confusion in its wake. It leaves clarity, even in absence. That's the lesson. That's the transformation. That's your power. When someone vanishes from your life, the first instinct is often to chase clarity. You want answers. You want explanations that will somehow make the silence make sense. But there's a moment in everyone's life when they must learn that not all closure comes with a conversation. Sometimes the silence is the answer. The lack of effort to stay, to explain, to repair. That is the clarity. Waiting for someone to return and explain their absence only prolongs your pain. The truth is, you don't need a detailed report to move on. You need to believe what their absence already says, that the connection was never as solid as you hoped. When someone disappears without a word, it's a loud message wrapped in silence. It's tempting to believe that if someone doesn't give closure, you're still connected somehow, that maybe there's unfinished business. But that illusion keeps you emotionally stuck. Holding on to someone's potential or hoping for a change of heart is the fastest way to lose your own. You don't need to revisit every moment in your head looking for the mistake that made them leave. The mistake wasn't yours to find. It's not your responsibility to make sense of someone else's inability to communicate. Some people are experts at exiting quietly because they've never mastered confrontation. But your healing doesn't depend on their maturity. It begins the moment you stop searching for explanations and start listening to the truth in the silence. People crave closure because they believe it will give them peace. But true peace comes from acceptance, not explanation. You don't need to be told why you weren't enough for someone who couldn't even be honest with themselves. The closure you're chasing is already in the final act. The disappearance, when someone walks away without a word, it tells you everything about their emotional capacity. And while that's painful, it's also revealing the truth you seek is in what they didn't do, what they failed to say, how they couldn't show up. Sometimes the biggest red flag isn't what someone says, it's what they don't. Their silence becomes your clarity if you're brave enough to stop romanticizing their absence. In relationships, people tend to overlook behavior and instead cling to promises. They remember the sweet words and shared dreams, not the inconsistencies and emotional distance. But when someone disappears, that's your invitation to finally see reality without the filter of hope. It's hard, yes, but liberating, because you're no longer anchored to potential, you're anchored to truth. And in that truth, you find the freedom to choose yourself. Closure becomes a byproduct of self-respect. You stop waiting for someone to validate your pain and start giving yourself permission to heal. It's not about what they failed to say, it's about what you're finally willing to believe. Some people will exit your life and leave you doubting your worth. That's the most dangerous effect of abandonment. It turns inward. You begin questioning everything, your value, your presence, your past actions. But let this be your reminder. People who are emotionally unavailable often leave chaos behind. That chaos is not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them. Their inability to face you and speak truthfully is their wound, not yours. You are not too much. You are not unlovable. You simply asked for honesty and they weren't capable of giving it. So instead, they left. And in doing so, they gave you the answer you were afraid to hear. They were never ready to match your depth. The need for closure is often rooted in the fantasy that you can make someone accountable, that if they just saw how much they hurt you, they'd feel remorse and that would heal the wound. But healing doesn't come from someone else's remorse. It comes from your decision to stop needing it. You can release yourself from that emotional debt. You don't have to keep waiting for someone to repay a pain they caused. Some debts are never paid back, and that's okay. Because you don't need repayment, you need release. Your energy is too valuable to be spent analyzing someone who didn't even say goodbye. Let their silence be your permission to start over, without them and without questions. There's a difference between wanting answers and needing them. Wanting them is human, of course. You're curious, you invested emotionally, you had hopes. But needing answers, that's where the danger lies. Because when you make someone's explanation your requirement for peace, you give them all the power. You tie your healing to a person who already left. And that gives their absence even more control over your life. But you have the choice to take your power back. To say, I didn't get the closure I wanted, but I'll give myself the peace I need. It's not easy. It takes strength. But it's how you shift from victim to victor in your own story. We live in a world that tells us closure comes from conversations, one last talk, one final explanation. But real closure isn't a dialogue, it's a decision. It's deciding that silence is enough of a reason to walk away for good. It's choosing to stop interpreting someone's disappearance as mystery and instead seeing it as message. They left, they didn't explain, they moved on, and now you will too. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious. Conscious of your worth. conscious of your boundaries, conscious of the fact that clarity doesn't always look the way we expect, but it still leads us where we're meant to go. When you stop chasing closure, you reclaim your energy. That energy, once invested in confusion and longing, is now redirected toward rebuilding, toward rediscovering your identity outside of someone else's story. You begin to remember who you were before the silence consumed your confidence. You rebuild with new values, consistency, communication, presence. You become the person you wished they had been, stable, secure, sincere. And slowly the pain softens. Not because someone returned with answers, but because you gave yourself what they never could, understanding. And that understanding didn't come from words. It came from choosing to stop waiting for them. In the end, the only closure you ever truly need is your own decision to move forward. You don't need a conversation. You don't need an apology. You don't need a reason that makes sense. All you need is the courage to trust the message in their silence, to believe that their absence says more than their presence ever could. It says they weren't capable. It says they weren't ready. It says they weren't for you. And that's all the clarity you'll ever need. Not because you gave up, but because you woke up. You saw the truth, and instead of chasing shadows, you chose the light. Your life begins where their silence ends. Your value has never been tied to who chooses to stay. It is not measured by someone else's ability to see your worth or to hold space for your emotions. Too often, people internalize someone's departure as evidence of being unworthy, unlovable, or not enough. But worth is not conditional. It doesn't shrink or expand based on who walks away. It exists independent of external validation. If someone couldn't commit to your presence, that says nothing about your deservingness. You were whole before they entered your life, and you remain whole now that they've left. It's easy to let abandonment dictate your self-perception, but strength lies in remembering your value even in the silence. You don't need to be chosen to be worthy. You need to choose yourself. You are not defined by someone's decision to stay or leave. You are defined by the way you respond when someone doesn't treat you as you deserve. That moment, when you choose dignity over desperation, is the most powerful declaration of self-worth. It's in the silence after their absence that you find your voice. You realize you never needed permission to value yourself. Being left isn't the loss. Staying where you are disrespected is. The world doesn't get to measure your value based on someone else's lack of recognition. The people who can't show up for you aren't mirrors of your inadequacy. They're reminders of your stand. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are here to embody it, regardless of who fails to acknowledge it. You don't have to fight to be kept. Love should not feel like a war for someone's attention, nor should your existence be up for negotiation. If someone made you feel like a burden for simply needing clarity or consistency, that was never love. Love does not ask you to dim your light or shrink your needs. It does not require you to tolerate breadcrumbs in the hope of receiving the whole loaf one day. The moment you find yourself begging for someone's time or emotional presence is the moment you must ask, is this connection building me or breaking me? The answer is always found in how it makes you feel. True value doesn't change, and it chooses peace over performance. You were never too much, you were just too real for someone unwilling to go deep. If your emotions were labeled as overwhelming, it's not because they were wrong, but because they required a level of vulnerability not everyone is ready for. The right connection will never make you feel like your needs are a nuisance. You are not hard to love. You're just not meant to force it with someone incapable of meeting you where you are. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. Your standards are not the problem. What you bring to the table is powerful, and it requires someone who knows how to sit with it, not walk away from it. The issue isn't your depth. It's their inability to swim in it. You owe it to yourself to stop shrinking in the hopes that someone might finally see you. Dimming your authenticity to fit into a smaller space does nothing but drain your spirit. The moment you start adjusting your worth to suit someone's comfort is the moment you abandon yourself. You should not have to minimize your love to make someone stay. The right people will rise to meet your light, not run from it. Your value doesn't fluctuate based on how convenient you are for others. You are not an option to be considered when it's easy. You are a priority to be honored even when it's hard. Those who walk away aren't rejecting you. They're removing themselves from a standard they could never meet. There is a dangerous pattern in thinking that if someone doesn't choose you, then you're unlovable. That mindset creates a dependency on external validation for internal peace. But self-worth has to begin within. It's built in the moments you refuse to settle for less. In the moments you stand firm in your boundaries. In the moments you say, I would rather be alone than half loved. That kind of power terrifies people who were never ready for depth. But it also attracts the kind of energy that aligns with your growth. You are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be embraced fully or not at all. And those who can't will step aside so that those who can may step forward. Letting someone go is not a reflection of loss, it's a reflection of growth. When you stop trying to prove your worth, you create space for people who already see it. That's the gift of releasing those who weren't ready. You make room for something aligned. You stop operating from fear and start moving from faith. Faith that what's meant for you will feel mutual, that it will show up consistently, that it won't require emotional gymnastics to keep someone interested. You don't need to strategize to be kept. You just need to be yourself, wholly and unapologetically. The right energy doesn't require chasing. It meets you with effort, not excuses. That's when you know you're being valued, not merely entertained. Some people come into your life only to reflect what you will no longer accept. They are lessons wrapped in attraction, red flags disguised as intensity. It's not about bitterness, it's about wisdom. Every time you choose yourself over being chosen, you elevate. You send a message to the universe that you are no longer available for half-hearted love. You begin to attract what you reflect: self-respect, clarity, purpose. The pain of someone walking away eventually fades, but the power of choosing yourself lasts. Don't let a temporary absence steal your long-term vision. Let it refine you, let it sharpen your standards, let it remind you that not everyone is meant to stay, and that's a blessing in disguise. Your presence is powerful, your energy is rare. You are not a placeholder or a backup plan. If someone failed to treat you like a priority, that's not your fault. That's their limitation. You didn't ask for too much. You asked the wrong person. The right space will never ask you to edit your emotions or hide your truth. You are not inconvenient. You are a gift. A connection that cannot meet you at your level is not a loss. It's a misalignment. The longer you stay in rooms where you're unseen, the more you forget your own light. Step out, step up, return to yourself. That's where your true power lives, within, not outside of you. In the end, you are not valuable because someone stayed. You are valuable because you exist. Your heart, your empathy, your strength, these things are not diminished by someone's inability to appreciate them. When someone leaves, they are not taking your worth with them. They are just showing you what they were never equipped to handle. And that's okay. Let them go. Let their silence echo in the distance while you rebuild with certainty. You never needed to be chosen to be complete. You only ever needed to remember who you were before someone made you forget. And now you're remembering. That's the true beginning, not of heartbreak, but of healing. Walking away from someone you once cared about is not always an act of bitterness. It's an act of bravery. It means choosing peace over confusion, clarity over chaos, and self-respect over hope that constantly hurts. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't love deeply. It means you loved yourself enough to stop accepting less than you deserve. Some connections are meant to teach you, not keep you. When someone stops showing up for you consistently, the most courageous thing you can do is stop showing up for them emotionally. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Love is not meant to be proven through suffering. It is meant to be mutual, balanced, and safe. If it causes more pain than peace, it's not a connection, it's a lesson. There's a unique kind of strength in knowing when to stop. Not because you've given up, but because you've grown. You've reached a point where your self-worth no longer bends to someone else's uncertainty. Walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care deeply about your own heart. Emotional exhaustion is not a badge of love. You don't have to bleed for something just to prove it mattered. Choosing to walk away is an act of reclaiming your power. It's declaring that confusion is not your home. It's saying that inconsistency doesn't deserve access to your peace. You are allowed to say no to energy that drains you. You are allowed to begin again without looking back. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's the moment you realize that protecting your peace is more important than maintaining a one-sided connection. Detachment doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally accepted the truth. You stopped romanticizing potential and started honoring patterns. Because the reality is, you can love someone and still walk away. Love does not require sacrifice of self. When you detach, you no longer beg for reciprocation. You no longer wait for change that may never come. You simply acknowledge what is and you act accordingly. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Learn the hard way. It's easy to get lost in cycles of emotional inconsistency, hoping that one day the effort will match the love. But hope, when stretched too far, becomes denial. And denial robs you of time, energy, and clarity. You deserve a love that doesn't leave you questioning your worth. You deserve someone who meets your energy, not someone who mirrors it only when convenient. Walking away is not about giving up on love. It's about giving up on imbalance. It's about saying, I refuse to be the only one holding this connection together. You weren't meant to carry emotional weight alone. Healthy love doesn't make you beg. It invites you in, consistently, willingly, freely. The pain of leaving someone you still care about is real. But what's more painful is staying in a space where your emotional needs are unmet. Every time you silence your intuition to preserve a relationship, you abandon yourself. Every time you rationalize emotional neglect, you chip away at your self-esteem. Walking away is not abandoning love, it's choosing self-alignment. When your heart and reality don't match, you must side with truth, because love without mutual effort is not love. It's attachment. And attachment without security becomes suffering. Leaving is an act of self-love, not selfishness. It's recognizing that your peace matters, even if your feelings are still present. Some of the strongest decisions are made in silence, not through explosive endings, but quiet conclusions that whisper, this is no longer healthy for me. Walking away isn't always dramatic. It can be gentle. A slow pulling back, a reclaiming of boundaries, a return to your center. Sometimes people won't even notice when you start to detach, because they were never fully present to begin with. That's how you know it's time. When your absence doesn't shake the room, your presence was never truly seen. And that's okay, because you're not leaving to be noticed, you're leaving to be whole. Closure isn't always found in conversations or final goodbyes. Sometimes closure is in the decision to stop explaining yourself to someone who never truly heard you. It's in the quiet moments when you realize your peace is louder than their inconsistency. Walking away doesn't mean erasing memories. It means redefining what those memories meant. Not all love stories are meant to last. Some are meant to teach you boundaries, resilience, and the art of letting go. The healing begins the moment you choose not to re-enter spaces where you were emotionally overlooked. You are not leaving because you stopped loving. You are leaving because you started loving yourself more. Emotional freedom begins where self-neglect ends. When you finally walk away, you give yourself permission to stop settling. You open a door to something more aligned, more present, more nurturing. You're not walking away from love. You're walking toward it. The kind that doesn't ask you to sacrifice your sanity or your softness. The kind that doesn't confuse you. Love should not leave you guessing. Love should ground you. And when it doesn't, the most loving thing you can do is exit gracefully. Not to make a point, not to seek attention, but to protect your spirit. Your energy is sacred. Let it be honored, not handled. Walking away is a form of self-respect. It's you telling the world, I will not tolerate emotional limbo. It's not about punishing the other person. It's about preserving your own well-being. You're not obligated to stay where love feels like a performance, where you constantly have to prove your worth just to be seen. Healthy relationships don't require auditions. They are built on mutual effort, clear communication, and shared emotional safety. If any of those things are consistently missing, it's not love, it's emotional survival. And you are not born to survive love. You are born to thrive in it. Eventually, the weight lifts, the sadness softens, and the clarity expands. You realize that walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning of deeper self-trust, the beginning of better boundaries, the beginning of relationships that feel easy, kind, and mutual. There is life after letting go. A life where you no longer chase love that confuses you. A life where peace becomes your baseline, not your reward. A life where your emotional world is protected, not penetrated by uncertainty. This is not a loss. It's a redirection toward everything you've always deserved. You just had to be brave enough to walk away to find it.